Mr. Victor was a billionaire in his late 40s, a man whose name carried quiet power in every boardroom he entered. His wealth came not from luck, but from strategy. He owned significant stakes in several successful companies, and his investments across different industries only made him richer with each passing year. People respected him, even feared him a little. With strong connections and an empire spanning continents, Victor seemed to have everything. But behind the fortune and influence was a grief that never left him. Years ago, Victor had been married before to the one woman who truly made him feel human. She was gentle, kind, and nothing about her was shallow. She grounded him in a world full of people who only cared about money and status. Then tragedy struck. His wife died, giving birth to their first child, a baby who didn't survive either. From that day, Victor never stopped blaming himself. He believed it was his fault for wanting a child so badly and asking her to try. Years later, after the death of his wife, Victor tried dating again. He met women from his own social circle, models, influencers, heirs of wealthy families, but every relationship ended the same way. They were obsessed with their looks, constantly talking about the next cosmetic procedure or the newest limited edition handbag. None of them had his late wife's warmth, her kindness, or her depth. To Victor, they all felt like copies of the same person, beautiful, but hollow. Marriage, he realized, wasn't worth the risk anymore. He didn't want to give anyone else a chance to break his heart or drain his bank account. The more he dated, the more he became certain of one thing. He wanted a child, not another heartbreak. So he made up his mind right after another disappointing episode of him trying out dating. No more marriage, he told himself one night while sitting alone in his penthouse. There has to be another way to have a child that doesn't come with complications. The only question left was, who would be the right woman for that plan? It was a Friday night, and Victor sat in the VIP section of an exclusive new lounge that had just opened downtown. The place buzzed with low music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Across from him sat his longtime friend, business confidant, and one of the very few people Victor actually trusted. Leo wasn't just an employee. He was like a younger brother to Victor. He is the only person who knew every hidden detail of Victor's life, including his quiet desire to have a child who could carry his name. The two men often came to places like this, pretending to unwind, but secretly watching people, hoping, however unlikely, that Victor might meet someone genuine. Tonight, though, Victor wasn't in the mood. He swirled the drink in his glass, looking thoughtful and a little tired. "Leo," he said, his voice low over the music, "what if I can't find someone to bear my child? What if no one fits what I'm looking for?" Leo, half distracted by his phone as he replied to a text, looked up with a slight grin and said, "Don't give up yet. If I were you, I'd stop looking so far. Maybe you're searching in the wrong places. Try focusing on the people already around you, not necessarily those in our class. Look for simple, honest, hardworking people. The ones who aren't blinded by greed." Victor frowned slightly, not quite understanding. Look around you? He thought. What was Leo really suggesting? Still, the words stuck with him. Hours later, as Victor drove back to his office to pick up a document he had forgotten, something he needed to review over the weekend, Leo's advice kept echoing in his mind. He didn't know it yet, but that single piece of advice was about to change everything. The elevator chimed softly as Victor reached the top floor, his private office level. When the doors slid open, the faint scent of cleaning detergent filled the air. The hallway lights reflected off the glossy marble floor, still wet from a recent mop. A yellow, wet floor sign stood in the distance. Victor paused, surprised. The janitorial staff usually worked late at night, long after he had gone home. He rarely saw them, just the results of their work every morning. Spotless floors, polished desks, and quiet order. Then he heard a soft humming coming from around the corner. For a second, it pulled him back to another time, to his late wife. She used to hum like that while doing little chores around their home to keep herself busy. The humming grew clearer as he walked toward his office, curiosity rising with every step. When he turned the corner, he saw her, a young woman, maybe in her early 30s, down on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor. A small bucket sat beside her. Her hair was tied neatly at the back, and she seemed lost in her own quiet rhythm. She stopped humming the instant she noticed him. Her eyes widened, realizing she wasn't alone. From his tailored suit and confident stance, she could tell he was someone important. She tried to stand quickly, but her foot slipped on the wet floor. With a startled gasp, she nearly fell, but Victor reacted instinctively, catching her before she hit the ground. "Careful," he said firmly, steadying her with a hand against her back. She straightened up, embarrassed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Her name tag caught his eye, Maria. She quickly bent down to dab his shoe with a towel, wiping the spot where she had stepped. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said softly. "I thought everyone had gone home." Victor gave a polite nod and walked past her toward his office. "It's all right," he replied evenly. "I just came to grab a file." He found the folder he needed, slipped it under his arm, and left the office without another word. As Victor rode the elevator down, Leo's words echoed in his mind. "Look around you, simple, honest, hard-working people. No greed." And for some reason, the image of Maria, whom he had just met, flashed before him. She was also gorgeous. He wondered why he'd never seen her, and quickly remembered he had over 500+ workers, and she had mentioned she only worked at night. Perhaps she could just be the one. He needed to find out more, so he knew how to proceed. As soon as Victor got home, he didn't delay. He called Leo to update him, and he also contacted his private investigator to run a full background check on Maria. Within a week, Victor got the background report in his email. As he sat alone in his study, he opened the file on his laptop and went through everything he needed to know about Maria. She is a 30-year-old single lady from Africa who came to the United States to work and support her family. She had clean records, no crimes, no trouble. She worked 2 jobs and sent most of her salary home to her aged mother and little brother. She was obviously going through a lot, but she remained cheerful. One interesting part of the report made Victor immediately sit up and smile smartly, his bargaining chip. It stated that her temporary work permit expires in a few weeks. That means if nothing is done immediately, her deportation is certain. So she must be desperate for help, Victor thought. His eyes lit up. Perfect, he thought. I can offer her permanent papers so she can have a child for me. Safe and simple, just like Leo said. A smile crossed his face. This was indeed a breakthrough, or so he thought. It was Monday, and Victor felt really positive. He waited for sunset, when he was sure persons for night duty would have been at the office, to buzz Maria to his office. She knocked nervously and entered. "Sit down, Maria," Victor said with a smile. "Remember me? The man from the wet floor." "Yes, sir," Maria replied, hoping she didn't do something wrong that night. She thought to herself. She couldn't get fired now. She needed this job. "I'm so sorry again, sir," she said out loud. "No apologies needed," Victor said. He studied her. She was a beauty to behold, her hair tied in a knot like the other night. She also looked healthy, had beautiful dentition, and seemed to be of good manners. "Perfect. I've called you here to discuss a rather delicate matter. I have a deal for you, so I'll go straight to the point. Carry my child, no marriage, no love. In return, you get a permanent visa and $1 million. You can stay here for as long as you like and help your family," he said confidently, positive that she wouldn't pass up this attractive offer. But Maria's eyes widened in shock. She jumped to her feet. "What? Me? Why me? I'm just a cleaner. I'm sorry, sir. This isn't right. I can't." She rushed out of the office, her heart pounding. Oh no. Victor's face fell. What he offered didn't prepare him for the rejection. He quickly buzzed Leo to his office. He had birthed this idea. He must know what they do next. Meanwhile, Maria quickly ran into the female restroom after leaving the boss's office. So many questions in her head. What just happened? What kind of offer was that just now? Was it for real? How did he know about her visa situation? Get pregnant by him? $1 million? That was a lot of money. Why her? What if there was foul play? Maria couldn't organize her thoughts. She stayed in the restroom until she was sure everyone had left, as the place grew very quiet. She quickly came out, the drama earlier still fresh on her mind. She had just few weeks left, but was that enough to jump on a very sensitive deal like this? She quickly cleaned and went home. As she lay on her bed that night, she couldn't help but reflect on what had happened earlier. Getting pregnant by a man, by contract, not love or marriage, was a delicate matter. She understood she was being exploited, but the permanent visa and $1 million were not a bad deal. It would go a long way toward her aged mom, and her brother being able to go back to school. The deal was good, but was it enough for her to throw her morals out the window? It was wrong, but she needed it. So, by dawn, she made up her mind. 2 days later, Leo was in Victor's office, going over contingency plans in case Maria didn't show up. They were both deep in conversation when the intercom on Victor's desk buzzed. His personal assistant's calm voice came through. "Sir, there's a Maria here. She says she's here to see you." Victor's eyes lit up for the first time that day. "Send her in," he said quickly. He leaned back in his polished leather chair, straightened his suit, and tried to appear composed. Moments later, there was a soft knock on the door. "Come in," Victor called. Maria stepped in slowly. She looked nervous, her hands clasped tightly around her bag. Her eyes darted around the large, modern office before landing on Leo, who sat across from Victor. She hesitated. "It's fine," Victor said gently, noticing her unease. "He's with me. You can speak freely." Maria took a small breath, then nodded. "Okay, sir," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I'll do it. I'll carry your baby." For a brief moment, the room went still. Then Victor smiled, the relief showing clearly on his face. Leo smiled too, nodding slightly, as if to say, "Finally." "Good," Victor said, his tone calm but pleased. "My lawyers will start drafting the contract today. They'll also begin the paperwork for your permanent visa immediately." He paused, his voice firm but reassuring. "You don't need to worry about anything. With my connections, no one will deport you." Maria nodded, but her body remained tense. Her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her bag as unease settled in her chest. She knew how people like Victor operated. Powerful men who could make promises sound like favors, but expect everything in return. As she left the office that morning, she couldn't shake the thought from her mind. What if this was a trap? What if she had just stepped into something she couldn't escape? The next morning, Victor didn't waste a second. He called his lawyer and gave clear instructions to prepare the contract. By noon, the papers were ready, neatly packed in a folder and delivered straight to his office. Everything was outlined carefully: Maria's role, her privacy, and the generous financial support she would receive in return. When Maria arrived, she looked nervous but composed. Victor offered her a seat across his desk and asked her to take her time. She read every page slowly, her fingers trembling a little as she turned each one. When she finally looked up, she nodded silently and signed her name at the bottom. Once the agreement was complete, Victor's legal team began the formal process of registering her sponsorship under his company's name. In some countries, wealthy individuals could sponsor workers or residents through business or humanitarian arrangements, and Victor had enough influence to make the process smooth and fast. Everything could be approved within weeks. Next came the medical part. Victor personally took Maria to one of the city's top private hospitals for comprehensive medical screening. The doctors ran several tests to check her blood, hormones, and overall health. When the results came back, they confirmed she was perfectly fit to carry a pregnancy. To prepare her body, the doctors prescribed vitamins, nutritional supplements, and a light fitness plan. They explained each step of the upcoming procedure and scheduled the official date. From that moment, all they could do was wait, quietly and carefully, for the day that would change both of their lives. Their arrangement meant Victor began spending more time with her than he had planned. It was during those quiet hours that he truly began to see her, not just as an employee or part of his plan, but as a person. He noticed small things about her that most people would miss. How she always tucked her hair neatly behind her ears whenever someone spoke to her seriously, as if to make sure she heard every word. She listened with genuine attention, not out of duty, but out of care. She was also devoted to her family. He had learned that she sent money home every month without fail. A week after they began the routine hospital checkups, Victor had asked for her bank details under the excuse of covering some expenses and transferred $5,000. He observed her reaction. She was grateful, polite, but not overly impressed. Moments later, he saw her open her banking app and send a large portion of that money to someone. A little digging later confirmed what he suspected. That someone was her mother. That simple act changed something in Victor. He started seeing her differently, with respect, even admiration. Unlike the women he had dated after his wife's death, she didn't seem dazzled by his wealth or eager to please him for personal gain. In fact, she gently questioned his generosity, insisting that her salary was enough. Her honesty caught him off guard. It had been a very long time since Victor had met a woman like her, humble, grateful, and untouched by greed. As the weeks went by, Victor and Maria began spending more time together. Hospital checkups, short walks after appointments, even a few quiet moments in between. It wasn't part of the plan, but somehow, being around her became something he looked forward to. Maria had a way of asking questions that caught him off guard, gentle yet thoughtful ones. She asked about his past, his late wife, and why he had sworn never to marry again. Usually, Victor avoided those conversations. But with Maria, it was different. She didn't judge, she simply listened. Her presence had a strange calm. After every talk, he felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his chest. He found himself opening up to her more than he ever planned to. She was easy to talk to, soft-spoken, patient, and genuine. Little by little, she stopped being just the woman carrying his child. She became Maria, a real person with dreams, opinions, and emotions. He started to notice her laughter, her quiet strength, the way she handled things with grace, even when she was tired. For the first time, Victor truly saw her, not as a vessel for his heir, but as a woman. A kind, intelligent, beautiful woman who deserved more than to be treated as part of a contract. And that realization terrified him, because it meant he was about to do the one thing he swore he never would. He was starting to care. It was only a week before the scheduled insemination procedure, but something inside Victor wouldn't let him rest. Every time he looked at the signed documents, the medical reports, and Maria's quiet, trusting face, he felt sick with guilt. It suddenly hit him. He was taking advantage of her situation. She was kind, vulnerable, and trying to survive. This wasn't a fair deal. It felt wrong, predatory even. Maria didn't deserve this. She wasn't doing it out of love or desire. She was doing it because she had no other choice. The agreement was her only way to avoid deportation and escape a life of poverty. To Victor, that made the entire arrangement feel tainted. He wasn't helping her. He was using her pain to solve his own emptiness. Earlier that week, he had voiced his doubts to his lawyer and longtime friend, Leo. But Leo only shook his head and said, "Victor, you've come too far. Calling it off now would be a breach of contract." That only made Victor feel worse. The thought of forcing something so personal through a legal agreement made his stomach turn. So he made his decision. He couldn't go through with it. A few days later, Victor asked Maria to come to his office. She arrived nervously, her eyes hopeful, unaware of what was coming. His lawyer was already seated when Victor took a deep breath and said quietly, "Maria, I've decided to cancel the pregnancy plan. The deal is off." For a moment, she didn't react, just stared at him, trying to understand. Then her expression changed. Hurt, confusion, and anger all at once. "You made me feel like I mattered," she said, her voice trembling. "And then you changed the rules." Victor tried to speak, to explain that it wasn't about her, that it was about his conscience. But before he could say a word, she turned and stormed out of his office. He stood there in silence, watching the door close behind her, wishing she had just given him 1 minute, just one, to explain himself. Victor felt a strange mix of relief and regret. On one hand, he had given Maria a chance at a better life. The visa paperwork was moving smoothly, and soon she would receive her permanent resident permit. That part made him genuinely happy. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the truth. The offer he had made her was unfair, maybe even exploitative. He had changed her life, yes, but in a way that also made him question his own morals. For several evenings in a row, Victor stayed late in his office, waiting, hoping to see her. He wanted to talk to Maria, to explain why he had made such a deal in the first place, that it wasn't out of cruelty, but confusion and loneliness. Yet every time he asked around, her coworkers told him the same thing. Maria had taken sick leave. He wasn't sure what to believe. Was she really unwell, or was she avoiding him? The thought bothered him more than he expected. He told himself that he had done the right thing, that ending the arrangement was best for both of them. But guilt still lingered. It had been a week since she left, and Victor found himself missing her more than he expected, thinking about how easy it used to be to just talk when Maria was around. She listened to him without judgment, without trying to impress or gain anything. She had this calmness that made him forget who he was, a billionaire with problems money couldn't fix. He often wondered what she was doing now. Was she reading like she always did during her breaks? Was she okay? If only she would just hear him out one more time, maybe he could explain, maybe even apologize. But the situation was far from simple. Part of what worried him most was the possible fallout. If the media, or worse, his company's HR department, ever discovered that he'd used his position to negotiate a pregnancy for papers, it could become a full-blown scandal. His PR team could, of course, try to clean it up. They'd call it a misunderstanding, say he was simply helping an employee in need. But Victor knew the truth. Behind the polished statements and damage control, he had crossed a line, using his power to shape someone else's life for his own purpose. And that realization stung more than he cared to admit. Maria didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. She probably thought he had moved on, or worse, that he didn't care. Victor thought about going to her home, or even visiting her second job just to see her face again. But he knew that would only make things harder. It could draw attention and put her at risk, especially if anyone recognized him. So instead, he called Leo, the only person he trusted enough to help him find a way to reach her safely. The next day, Leo showed up at Maria's other workplace. When she first saw him, she turned away and acted like she didn't know him. But Leo didn't leave. He waited patiently near the counter until she finally agreed to talk. His eyes looked tired, almost desperate, and something in his expression made her pause. During her coffee break, she sighed and sat down with him at one of the small tables in the corner. Leo took a deep breath before speaking. "Maria," he began quietly. Ever since Mr. Victor's wife died, he promised himself he'd never fall in love again. Losing her broke something in him. And when he tried dating, the women he met only cared about money, looks, and fame. It pushed him further away from the idea of love. He just wanted a child, someone to carry on his name. When he met you, the plan started, but then he realized you didn't deserve to be used like that. That's why he called the whole thing off. Maria sat still, her fingers tightening around her cup. A strange mix of emotions washed over her, confusion, sadness, and something close to pity. For the first time, she saw Victor not as a cold, controlling man, but as someone quietly broken by grief. Everything suddenly made sense. The way he had pulled back, the distance, the silence. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was trying to protect her from a decision he knew was wrong. And that realization hit her harder than anything else. She felt foolish for misjudging him. But more than that, she felt sorry for his loss, his loneliness, and the heavy kind of love he was too afraid to feel again. The next day, Maria went to Victor's office. The moment he saw her walk in, his expression softened. His usually serious face lit up with relief. "I'm glad you came," Victor said quietly as she took a seat across from his desk. "I was only trying to protect you." Maria looked at him, her heart heavy with guilt. She could see in his eyes that he meant every word. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I understand everything now. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you that day. You were only trying to help me. You're a good man, Mr. Victor." "Thank you, sir." Tears rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "It's all right," Victor said gently, sliding a handkerchief across the desk toward her. "Don't cry." He paused for a moment, then added in his calm, decisive tone, "I'll have my accountant transfer $1 million into your account before the end of today. It's part of the contract we signed, and even though things didn't go as planned, I intend to keep my word. You're not allowed to refuse. It's already settled." Maria's eyes widened. More tears flowed, not from sadness this time, but from disbelief and gratitude. For the first time, she truly saw Victor, not the billionaire everyone respected or feared, but the man beneath the title, a man who cared. He wasn't selfish, nor cold, as most assumed. He was kind, deeply considerate, and willing to do right by her, even when he didn't have to. Before she left, he offered her something unexpected, a real job in one of his companies, along with full sponsorship for her college education. "You deserve a chance to build your own life," he told her. Maria thanked him through her tears, promising to stay in touch. And she kept that promise. A month later, Victor's phone buzzed with a message that made his heart skip a beat. "Thank you for everything. Coffee tomorrow? My treat." Maria sent. Victor read it twice, hardly believing it. She hadn't left his thoughts for a single day in the past month. He had hoped she would reach out, prayed for it even. Their first coffee meeting took place at a small cafe near Hale Tower. Victor arrived early, nervous in a way he hadn't felt in years. When Maria walked in, dressed in a simple cream dress with her hair loose, he couldn't help but smile. She looked radiant, free, confident, and completely herself. "No wet floors today," she teased, grinning as she approached. Victor laughed softly. "No, just us." Without thinking, he stood and pulled her into a warm hug. He had missed her more than he realized. They spent hours talking. Maria told him stories about her mother back home and her younger brother. Victor listened, smiling at every detail. Then, for the first time, he opened up about the night he first heard her humming in the hallway, and how it had stayed with him since. "Maria," he said quietly, "you're different. You're real. No games, no pretenses. And that's exactly what I need." She blushed, looking down at her coffee. "You saw me when no one else did," she whispered. From that day on, they continued seeing each other. What had started as a contract, a fake, practical arrangement, slowly grew into something real. Both of them knew how complicated it was, but neither could deny the truth. Somewhere along the way, they had fallen in love. It had been a year since Victor and Maria started seeing each other. What began as quiet dinners and long conversations had grown into something real, something Victor hadn't felt in years. One beautiful evening, Maria came over to Victor's mansion for dinner. The house was softly lit. The smell of her favorite food, roasted chicken with herbs, filled the dining room. After dessert, Victor stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a small red velvet box. When he opened it, a diamond ring sparkled under the warm light. "Maria," he said, his voice low and sincere, "you slipped into my heart before I even noticed, and now I can't imagine breathing without you. Marry me, not for deals or power, but for love." Maria's eyes widened and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes," she said, covering her mouth with her hands, her voice trembling with joy. Victor smiled, his own eyes wet. "I promise love, not power," he whispered. "I promise honesty, not fear," Maria replied softly. Then, in that quiet dining room, they kissed, gently at first, then fully, as if sealing every word they'd said. 2 days later, at sunset, they got married in a small ceremony on Victor's private terrace. The view overlooked the ocean, glowing gold beneath the fading light. Only a few close friends were there. There were no reporters, no designer decorations, just the sound of waves and the vows they spoke from their hearts. 10 months later, they welcomed a baby girl, a healthy, bright-eyed little soul. As Victor held the baby in his arms for the first time, he smiled through tears. "My real heir," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Born from love." Maria leaned against him, smiling. "Our family," she whispered. Victor wrapped his arms around them both, feeling peace for the first time in years. "I once wanted an heir," he said quietly, "but God gave me a home instead." The man who once measured his worth by wealth and power had finally found something greater, a woman who healed his heart and a daughter.